Welcome back to the ICIT Fall Briefing. We are coming down to the final stretch. Our next session is about prepare. We've already been through recover, plan, and now we're at the prepare side of the continuum. So we have two very well-known individuals, and we have Scott Sloan, who is a Senior Director of Pre-Sales Engineering at Veritas, and we have Bobby Saxon, who is the Deputy CIO at the Department of Health and Human Services, Center for Medicare Medicaid Services. Scott is responsible for leading a team of highly skilled sales engineers who deliver proven, modern, and integrated solutions to the U.S. public sector, a U.S. Navy veteran and graduate of the University of Maryland University College. Scott brings with him a wealth of experience in cybersecurity and data protection solutions from his time as a federal consultant and a leader at multiple technology vendors. Scott lives in Northern Virginia with his wife and 3 daughters, but originates from the Pittsburgh area. Scott, welcome to ICIT's Fall Briefing.
Thank you, Joyce. Yeah, I'd like to welcome Bobby Saxon to the Fireside Chat. Bobby is a retired Army colonel and the Deputy Director of CIO for the Office of Information Technology, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Previously, he served as Acting Director for CMS Emergency Preparedness and Response Operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. Joined CMS in 2017 as the CTO for the Center for Consumer Information Insurance Oversight. Most people may know this as healthcare.gov. Bobby is also the government chair for the American Council for Technology and Industry Advisory Council's Health Community of Interest. First, I want to personally thank you for your continued service to this country. You've received numerous awards, both from your military service, but also a public servant. And one of the such awards was from the healthcare.gov. Can you share maybe some of your experience as you walked into that role as a Chief Technology Officer for healthcare.gov, which it started out in a turbulent beginning?
Well, thank you, Scott, for that introduction, and thank you, Joyce, for having me on today. And Scott, I'd love to talk a little bit about healthcare.gov. I joined CMS as the CTO for healthcare.gov back in January of 2017, and I rolled in the last week of what we called Open Enrollment 4. So that was a longer open enrollment. That was one of those 90-day open enrollments. Started on November the 1st and went through the end of January. So I got just a little bitty taste of what was going on during an open enrollment, of some of the challenges that we were having with performance and with stability, and really with the customer experience, which was fantastic. So as I grew my knowledge at healthcare.gov, one of my real focuses was to try to figure out how we could improve that customer experience and how we could move away from the challenges that we had in the past, which had significantly given us a black eye. October of 2013 is quite well known in the IT industry as a bad time for healthcare.gov. So what I did was I tried to seek out the best qualified people that I had on my teams and then empower them. And I spent a lot of time talking to them about what the challenges were, what they thought it would take to fix those challenges, and then what they needed from me as the senior leader to help empower them to make that happen. We did a lot of major changes to the backside of healthcare.gov in order to prep for Open Enrollment 5. And we were very fortunate that not only in Open Enrollment 5, but also in Open Enrollment 6, we had 99.8% uptime with no throttling, with almost no performance or stability issues. And it really had to do with empowered teams that understood resiliency, understood to track down and then address the most challenging risk that we had, and to set aside the problems that had been somewhat ankle biters. When you're at home and your computer does something odd, many times you'll just do a reboot and suddenly it's fixed and you feel good about yourself, and you go on, and weeks later you have to go do that again. But when 1 million people knock on your door on November the 1st and you had been rebooting the servers, that does not go very well. So we created a culture where we tracked down problems. with vigorous passion, and then solve those problems so that those problems did not arise during open enrollment.
So, leading that kind of change in an organization like that, obviously, you talked about a leadership trait of empowering. What other leadership traits was required to get that organization from the mindset that they're in, and obviously some of the background that they've experienced, and get them to where you were able to be that successful?
Well, a lot of it had to do with culture change, Scott. A lot of the folks that were there when I got there had been there since the very beginning, both the healthcare.gov Fed team as well as many of our vendor partners. And there was a certain amount of shell shock, there was a certain amount of risk aversion, and a certain amount of, well, we've always done it this way. And with me coming in as an outsider, and someone who liked to run into challenges, I was able to sit down with folks and as a senior leader, help them understood that not only did I have their back, but that I also had the responsibility, and that I wanted to empower them to go do what they had great skill sets to do, and that I would shoulder the responsibility. And in doing that, it really empowered my teams. And so it empowered them to take more risk than they had previously taken before my arrival.
Yeah, I imagine you must have brought a sense of calm and fearlessness to that organization, which was obviously needed. And you talk about moving that agency or that solution into the cloud, and with that, I know a lot of organizations have struggled with just the talent pool that's available. How did you also shift that, in getting an organization that was then able to operate in a new environment?
Well, Scott, that's a great question. The multi-year approach to addressing not only challenges, but really building a new foundation of capability at healthcare.gov. I tackled that a couple of different ways. The first is we had immediate challenges with stability and performance, and we couldn't move ourselves out of the cloud fast enough to get past those challenges. We had to overcome them in the data centers and with the capabilities that we had from an infrastructure point of view. And that was really about empowering people to take their skill set to do great things. I like to think of myself as a great leader. However, I was fortunate to walk into a place where there were a lot of people there that were really easy to lead because they had skill sets that were extremely valuable and were an asset to the organization. And once empowered, they were able to make things happen. And that was both in our Fed staff as well as in our vendor partner staff. The move to the cloud actually began about a month prior to my first open enrollment on November the 1st of 2017. And that move, though, was about a 16-month move. And we did not see the advantages of that move until after my second open enrollment at healthcare.gov. So the changes to go from significant challenges with performance and stability, with continuous throttling of people at the front door, to almost no challenges, less than an hour and a half of downtime each open enrollment. And that's like 1,100 hours of scheduled uptime that we were able to have less than an hour and a half of unscheduled downtime. That didn't happen because of a move to the cloud. It happened because really good people started doing really good things and with a long-term approach to solving problems. And now I'm excited about what they're doing over there. I'm no longer associated with healthcare.gov. I've been gone for about 18 months. But the team is still doing great work. And I got a briefing just this morning, as a matter of fact, from them about some of their cloud work, some of the things that they've done, not only from a cost savings point of view, but really from a capability increase point of view. As everyone is aware, we've been dealing with a pandemic for some time now, And that pandemic potentially is going to have an impact on the number of people that come to healthcare.gov on November the 1st seeking coverage. And so we don't know what those numbers are going to be, but we feel that it may be somewhat of an increase. And so the ability to be in the cloud has allowed that team to, over the next 30 days, to expand their performance and stability capabilities, adding more servers and adding more memory and widening their path in order to be prepared for an additional surge. I jokingly say, when 1 million people knock on your door on the same day, it could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% more than that on day one this year because of the impacts of the pandemic.
Yeah, that would just be almost impossible, in a private data center compared to trying to do that in the cloud. So it almost sounds like, healthcare.gov could actually be a model for, going from an on-prem to, moving a solution in the cloud, for the government to look at.
I may be one of the many proud parents over there, but we believe it's a model. And it's a model that really, like a phoenix, rose out of a fire. And but now, 8 open enrollments in to this process, we have we have a totally different environment, a totally different mentality of how we look at utilizing our resources, the ability to scale exponentially because of being in the cloud. And believe it or not, we're actually doing it for less money.
Wow, it sounds like a great story, and also, one of the challenges, with moving in the cloud, or really, I guess, the question I'd ask is, were there any unforeseen challenges, as you went into the cloud? Obviously there's a lot of benefits, and you hear a lot of people tout those benefits, but a lot of times you don't hear of maybe some of the challenges that you ran into unexpectedly as you start operating in the cloud.
Surprisingly, there weren't, and part of it is we probably just were lucky. But the other part of it is that we have a very diverse vendor partner team at healthcare.gov, and that vendor partner team has seen a little bit of everything in their time across the entire federal government as well as their commercial customers, and we pulled them in close, and we ask them to be partners with us and not to simply be contractors with us. And that partner approach, they not only work to help us be better, but they work to help other vendor partners in the organization be better. One of the examples is one of our largest vendor partner organizations. They had done a lot of cloud work, and they had cloud people and cloud skill sets in their company. Some that weren't on our project at that time, but they were able to kind of rapidly bring them in. But some of our smaller companies didn't have that capability. And when I sat down with that team and I said, listen, I need you to share what you learned with everyone else on this team, they never hesitated. And that helped the team members that we had overcome challenges, because they had a big that was willing to share information with them, because it was for the greater good of the organization and for the customer experience with healthcare.gov at the end. We did have to address skill sets issues, but we worked with our vendor partners very closely. Where do we lack skill sets? We worked to try to contract those skill sets to augment the whole organization, not just an individual organization, because we didn't ask them on day one to be a cloud organization. We asked them day one on most of their contracts to be a data center organization, and we needed to get to the cloud, and we needed them to go with us, and we needed them to gain skills along the way. And it ended up working out beautifully, because not only did we get there and it was successful, but many of those folks, their companies kind of transformed, especially for some of the smaller companies, because of the skill sets they had to provide or had to develop and then provide as a part of our journey to the cloud. One experience that I remember on a very personal level is I was in the operations center during open enrollment, and this was the year before we were rolling to, but everyone knew we were now on the move to the cloud. And one of my vendor partner team members was sitting, operation centers can be very slow sometimes, but that individual was sitting there doing some online classes for AWS, because that's where we move most all of our stuff to. We got in a little small conversation, and this person was just so excited and so proud of the fact that he was being given the opportunity to grow his skill set in that area, and excited about how he was going to be able to utilize that at healthcare.gov to really transform us as an organization. And I saw a lot of that, and it was to his credit, to his company's credit, and to our team's credit, that they took that kind of collegial kind of approach to let's share, let's educate, let's be better, and let's make this organization the kind of organization it ought to be to serve the American public.
Yeah, I mean, you just highlighted a couple good points there. One, I liked your advice on, partnering. Back to, being able to prepare, having that public-private partnership with industry goes a long way. And it sounds like you really took advantage of that to your benefit. And then, the last point you made there is that excitement that, you were able to drive in the organization and achieve that mission. So, well done. That was, a great story.
All the credit goes to my team members, both Fed and vendor partners. They were excellent to work with, and we're very proud. And you hear me say we a lot. I haven't been there in 18 months. They're still doing great things after I left.
That's nice. Now, the other thing, obviously moving to the cloud also brings a lot of, security requirements, and and sometimes you hear about being compliant. But did you, how did you take that approach? Obviously, compliant is one thing, but being secure is taking it to another level.
Yeah.
What was,
Well, first of all, I see compliant as an evil word. I constantly push back against compliance, because I have seen in my career too many times people be compliant but not be good. And I always talk to my teams about that, about if we're compliant and something goes south, and they walk in here and they go, okay, whose fault was it? You're not going to be able to hold up a book and go, see, I've done everything by the book. What they really care about, what our customers care about, is does it work? Does it work well? Is it stable? Does it deliver on the mission essential function that it needs to support? And so I've always tried to set a different mindset there. That's a culture challenge that I try to address on a regular basis. I never was one that feared the security of the cloud any more than I feared the security of my data centers. Actually, I felt we would be more secure in the cloud because of how the cloud was maintained and orchestrated by a larger company who's making their whole entire career reputation on the ability to deliver that capability securely. Whereas in a data center, there were so many different variables that could be a challenge. Now, I felt confident because we have a great security team at the CMS, and George Hoffman, who is our deputy CIO, is the acting CISO for now and has been for a while. He and his team are able to deliver a peace of mind for the organization, because they are constantly very vigilant and are staying abreast of all of the situations that they need to be abreast of, and the potential holes in our security wall, and working hard to protect us at the perimeters and to help us do best practices. Inside of CMS, we have a document we call the acceptable risk standards, and there are over 400 controls in that document that, whether you're in the cloud or whether you're in a data center, those are still controls that you must follow in order to secure your application and secure the data that's in that application. So we still adhered very closely to that. There clearly were some changes because we were in the cloud, but those were changes that we were ready for and changes that we embraced, and we feel comfortable that we are secure, but we work every day. We have a team that is working hard every single day, not only on healthcare.gov, but across all of CMS to protect our systems, protect the data that's in those systems.
Yes, I guess that, brings us to the next point is, you leave the CTO's role from healthcare.gov and now come over, you served as the acting director for emergency preparedness and response operations. And then shortly thereafter, COVID-19 hits, right? So, that preparedness that you had from your time, working with healthcare.gov, did that help the organization, help the mission get through, the pandemic?
Well, I like to jokingly say that I was drugged kicking and screaming into the ePro job. I see myself as an IT person, but really I'm a problem solver who loves to do IT. And ePro was a totally different mission, emergency preparedness and response operations. And I was brought over there to step into a situation where we had been under-delivering and underperforming for some time. And unfortunately for us, an IG audit had called us out on some work that we had done. And we knew as an organization, my senior leadership knew that we had to be very bold and very aggressive in addressing that. And so they brought me in, and I kind of remade the team for emergency preparedness and response operations with a focus on continuity of operations, disaster recovery, and emergency management. And a lot of that is IT work. So how do we keep these IT systems up and running in the middle of a disaster? And many IT folks are very familiar with that. But when you really dig into it from the business point of view, you're keeping systems up because these systems are tied directly to an essential function for the organization. And that tie between IT and business deliverables was something that I really had not connected well myself. And so going to ePro was a huge growth opportunity for me, not only to start digging into all 25-ish components inside of CMS and their mission and their business and their systems, but then how do we help them be better? And how do we change the culture when it comes to that kind of preparedness? And so we were very bold and very aggressive in getting additional training for a lot of folks and holding internal seminars and doing, detailed analysis, business process analysis, business impact analysis, pulling up other studies and reports that had been done and utilizing those to start to try to find all of the cracks in the organization. And one of those was pandemic preparation. But quite frankly, I think that it would not be unreasonable for anyone to think that a year ago, although we all had pandemic on our radars, because, if you're doing certain type of work, you're looking at all disasters. I mean, we're looking at nuclear attacks as well. But there were some that we thought were lower priority. And so we were concerned about our systems and the protection of those systems. And we were also concerned about the pandemic. And we participated in pandemic exercises. We updated the mission essential functions associated with what are those deliverables, what mission does CMS have to continue to perform, whether it's a hazard that affects CMS or somewhere else in the country. And we also created and updated multiple iterations, a pandemic plan. And just about the time that we had that pandemic plan where we felt it was in a good spot, the pandemic did hit. And what you learn normally in disasters like this is you can prepare as hard as you can, but there's still work to do to prepare. And so we were in a much better place than we would have been in, but there was still work to be done. And to the credit of our administrator and to our leadership, everyone hit the ground running, working exceptionally hard, long hours, and digging into every possibility of how we can help the American public and our 145-ish million beneficiaries, whether it's for Medicare, Medicaid, healthcare.gov, and so on. And we had the things in place also to protect the employees of CMS. And so we were able to roll out quite quickly into maximum telework so that our employees could go home, be safe, and yet be on devices like this, working hard every day in order to make sure that we're doing the things that could benefit the country during this pandemic.
Was there anything that that was just just couldn't plan, right? It's something that was unforeseen as you're making the shift to a telework environment that you wish you would have planned for ahead of time?
Well, I think when the history books are written about this pandemic, there's a lot of things we all learned and we all wish that we had been better at. But in our case, from an IT point of view, we were able to quickly not only switch capabilities, because now we're in a Zoom world or a Zoom type of application world, and we had been doing that for years at CMS, but not to scale of the whole entire organization. And as the situation grew dire, we at CMS, and I know across HHS and across the federal government, organizations were rapidly testing capacity, enhancing capacity, retesting capacity. And when we did ultimately roll out into maximum telework, we went from one day working in the office to the next day, over 6,000 people on Zoom and carrying on meetings, and with almost seamlessly. And a tremendous amount of credit goes to our infrastructure and user services group inside of OIT, because they are always leaning forward and looking at new technologies and piloting some of those technologies. And the capabilities that we had 3 months before the pandemic were not the capabilities that we ended up rolling out in maximum capability for the pandemic. And it was because that team had been piloting and wanting to improve the customer experience. And we got very fortunate that the timing of those two just played out exceptionally well. And we were able to roll out Zoom and have the bandwidth. That was another, major change that we had to make in order to totally enable that capability.
Yeah, I've heard stories of a lot of agencies suffering from the bandwidth issues with their remote workers. Now, coming through that, has there been any, do you see, the mission being enhanced now that we've gone through this crisis, or we're still going through it, I guess, for CMS? What benefits of going through this have you seen so far?
Have you ever had a storm come through and knock a tree down in your yard, Scott, or a fire or some little mini disaster at your house? The thing that happened then, however small or however large, puts an impression on your brain that you must be better prepared for that and other things going forward. And I think that it's human nature to be that way. And I think CMS, as well as probably not just the federal government, agencies and organizations and companies across America, across the world, will come out of this in a different situation. And those that come out the other side, unfortunately, some businesses aren't going to make it, but the ones that do make it on the other side are going to be stronger, because we're going to have systems in place to deal with these kinds of scenarios that we had never imagined previously, or never really thought about what the actual real preparation goes into for that. I know from my personal point of view that I was never a huge fan of telework, employees, especially on full-time telework, but I'm quite confident now that 6,000 people at CMS can do full-time telework and still do great work. And so my mindset has changed there. I know I've heard the administrator talk about that as a mindset change as well for her. And so I believe that we as an organization will be better at having a very diverse organization that is dispersed across the country. And what that'll allow us to do is it'll allow us to go attract even better talent, because now when we're out searching for talent, we're searching for talent that's going to show up in one of our regional offices or our office up in Baltimore in a full-time or a maximum telework organization, and one that's been through this. We're going to be able to look at someone and go, we don't care that you live in San Diego, because we need your skill set, and we have the tools to fully empower you to help this organization be better, regardless of where you live or even what schedule you need to work on. Our maximum telework, I think we now go from 5 a.m. to 12 midnight. So our thing is can you put in 8 quality hours in the course of that time frame? You're dealing with your kids during school, you're dealing with, any other situation out there. we can be flexible and still be a great organization. So I do believe that we'll come out of this stronger, and we're already applying some of the lessons learned, and we'll continue to apply lessons learned as this thing continues to play out.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, now you're not limited to just the DC area to help, or the Baltimore DC area to support your mission. You can go out really anywhere. And I think I was even reading the Air Force, is looking to do this as well, and not just be focused on hiring people out of the DC area at the Pentagon, but why not open it up? You've had this capability that we can provide employees remote access. It's a great game changer for everybody. And to your other point is, I think everybody now believes that anything is just about possible, and we've seen pandemics, natural disasters. I mean, this year has been a bit crazy, but definitely thank you there. I guess as we wrap up here, as we're coming up to the bottom of the hour, is there any final recommendations that you'd like to provide others, as how they should plan for the future, and how they should lead their organization through the next crisis?
Well, I spoke a little bit about risk and risk aversion earlier. I do believe that it's extremely important. And one of the lessons that I learned in my capacity as the acting director for emergency preparedness and response operations is to identify risk and then work to mitigate that risk. You cannot eliminate all risk, but what you can do is you can develop ways to manage and to respond to that risk. And either when I was at Socio, healthcare.gov, managing the risk of a surge of people that would have come into the system and we as not being able to handle those, or managing the risk of losing the ability to deliver on our mission essential functions at CMS. That played a critical role in how you think about that, how you plan for the future, how you plan your systems in support of that, and really how you get the right frame of mind for people. Again, there's a lot of lessons learned that will come out of this pandemic experience as it continues to play out. But I believe that when people are prepared for bad things to happen, when those bad things do happen, they're more prepared to deal with those bad things and respond the way we would all want organizations like CMS and HHS to respond. Show up, get the job done, deliver on the mission, and be prepared for the next thing that might come along. We're wrapping up the end of a hurricane season, and this has been one of the most active hurricane seasons in our country in decades, if not forever. And the EPRO office monitored every single tropical depression, every single tropical storm, every single hurricane, and all the way from creation all the way through its final little breath of wind, in the middle of still doing all of this with the pandemic. So, the hardened approach to dealing with the pandemic made them better at dealing with other things. And millions of people across the country were able to take advantage of Medicare, Medicaid waivers because of the work that EPRO did in conjunction with the centers and the offices to ensure that those waivers went out the door every time that they were asked for, and most of the time proactively, because we knew people needed our assistance.
Yeah, it's a very vital mission, but definitely thank you, sir, for taking the time and sharing your leadership wisdom with us today.
Oh, Scott, you are a man after my heart. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you all. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Scott, for this opportunity. The mission of CMS is important, and I'm glad to share a couple of nuggets from the organization. But again, it's about those 6,200 people and the many vendor partners that we have that make this happen every single day. Thank y'all very much.
And thank you, Scott. Thank you, Bobby. We appreciate your time and your effort. And there were a lot of good nuggets of information that people took away, and they'll be able to prepare a lot better because of this conversation. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.